Hi, it's Steve from Aging Joyfully. Steve is again tired from his new job, but we've been looking through some papers and things trying to declutter a little bit, and I found a box of my papers from senior year in high school that I had written for English class. I didn't even know I still had these, and I don't remember writing them. This one in particular I wrote almost 45 years ago to the day. And we had just moved to the South from the Midwest, and the South was very different. It seems like our teacher, who was single, she had us write a lot of papers on love and dating and marriage. Don't know why. Maybe she was concerned with those topics herself. But the one big thing I did notice in the South, the big difference was that most of the girls in my senior year were engaged, and most of them got married upon graduation. Whereas in the North, it seemed like it was more of an education focus, and people that were not already in serious relationships as they knew they were going to go to college. That felt like a big difference, that everybody was paired off when I got to the South. That's just what I felt. And many of them got married. I know I went to our 5-year high school reunion, and I went to our 10-year reunion. And by then, many of these people were divorcing on their second marriage. But the story, we were required to write a paper on Mr. Right. We had to write what we wanted in a husband, and I guess she required, because they wanted to teach you a 5-paragraph paper, she required 3 traits that you're looking for in a husband. Ironically, I had just come across a video of another YouTuber who is a 71-year-old grandmother who has been divorced. She got married. She was raised in the South and got married at 15 and got divorced at 29. She's been divorced now over 40 years. And she had a video on what she was looking for in a spouse if she were to get married again. And what she said was, first of all, the man has to put up with me. Second of all, he has to have his own hobbies, of other hunting or fishing, something like that, whatever men do today, because I have my own life. And then she said, he has to let me cook his dinner, or maybe he could take me out to dinner. I'd like to have somebody to go to a movie with. And then lastly, he has to be a Christian, which I'm going to explore that issue in another video about her saying that he had to be a Christian. But right now I'm going to read my paper on Mr. Right. It is 5 paragraphs, so it will take a couple minutes. And, you know, people today keep saying, is today so different than the past? Baby boomers were so privileged and spoiled and indulged. But here's my paper. Almost everyone has goals that they want to achieve in his lifetime. Now, I originally said there because I was including, I think, both his and hers. So I used the plural. But in 1980, everything was written from a masculine viewpoint. She crossed it out and put his. Even though a female wrote this paper, everything was always written in a male viewpoint. That alone is a big difference in today's writing. Today, there would be acceptable because there is no longer plural. They and their, I think, is now singular. I mean, you know, everything has changed. All the rules are different. But it's funny, she changed it to his lifetime. Marriage is usually one main goal. In 1980, it was. But first, one has to find that special person. Marriage is a serious commitment. Since the couple will be living together the rest of their lives, they should not rush into matrimony. This is why they look around and date several people. You want to live with someone whose personality is similar to your own. There are certain qualities that you might want your future husband to possess. Honesty, intelligence, and consideration are 3 qualities that I would want my future husband to possess. Honesty is an important quality that everyone should possess. That is my biggest characteristic that I look for in people today. I look for honest people, and when I catch people in a lie, which is often because most people lie, and yes, I could tell some white lies accidentally, or my white lies are typically if somebody says, do I look fat, and I don't want to hurt their feelings, I say no. That would be the extent of my lies. But I look for honesty in everybody, and I am so disappointed when people are not honest, particularly if they say they are a Christian, which is big in the Bible Belt, for people to boast about their Christianity while being dishonest at the same time. I especially want my husband to possess it. There are several reasons for this. One, is that if he weren't honest, he might cheat on me. I find that interesting that I talk about people cheating, because in my world, nobody was cheating. I had my father and my uncles, and they were all in long committed marriages and didn't cheat. So I find that interesting. But back then, Ann Landers was like the Bible of life. You would read Ann Landers every day, and she would answer all of your questions on life. And there was a lot of cheaters in Ann Landers. So that's where I think that was coming from, because in my personal life, I didn't experience any cheaters back then. I want my husband to be sincere. If he constantly lies to me, then I could never trust him or rely on him when I need him. I would always be wondering if he is faithful to me. When we get married, we make a commitment and we vow to love and honor each other. Without that honor, our marriage wouldn't survive. But honesty isn't the only quality my husband should possess. Intelligence is another important quality to have. I feel very strongly about this. I want a mate whom I could talk to. I want to be able to relate to him. If he weren't intelligent, then we wouldn't have much in common. I found that interesting too, that I thought I was very smart at the time. I think it's because when we were living in the Midwest, they had done an assessment on your class placement, and our class was over 600 people, and I ranked about 58. I was in the top 10%, which was surprising to me, that I had never thought of myself as smart until I got that ranking and realized that maybe I am smart. Also, if he is intelligent, he would probably have a good job, and we wouldn't have to worry about money. Because again, men make more money than women per hour or per salary. That's still true today. So back then, men made quite a bit more than women. So you had to rely on your husband's income to know that you were going to be secure. If you married a man who didn't make much money, even if you worked, you were not going to be financially secure. Our marriage would survive better without those worries. Like today, in the Great Recession, as the Great Recession hit, we witnessed the sheriff in our neighborhood the whole couple years and repossessing houses, and we saw marriages fall apart quite a bit in the Great Recession. So even then, at 17, I said, you have these money worries that might lead to a divorce. Honesty and intelligence are very important qualities to have, but there is an even more important one. Consideration is the most important quality that one should possess. A thoughtful and attentive mate is appreciated in most marriages. Everyone likes to feel special, and a considerate person would make me feel special. I would always be doing things for my husband, and I hope, I can't read this. She changed what I wrote. I hope would do the same for me is what she changed it to. If my husband is considerate, then I'm sure our marriage will last. Everyone is different. Everyone looks for different qualities when choosing a mate. I hope someday I can find someone who is honest, intelligent, and considerate. Only then will I have accomplished my goal. I don't remember that being a goal. I think this paper was forced on us. I remember not wanting to get married at 17. I felt I was way too young to be getting married, and I wasn't really interested in dating. I did go to college because my older siblings, there was 8 of us, and there was 4 in college, so I was the 5th one. One had already graduated. I was the 5th one in college, so that made 6, and then one never went. One did get married young, and one was younger than me. So I was following my siblings' example, plus education was always stressed in our family. We weren't wealthy by any means. My father was an engineer who we grew up middle class, but with 8 kids, all a year apart, money was always tight. So I'm thankful I didn't say I was looking for someone with a lot of money, because I believe around that time, I remember Family Ties being a really big show with Alex Keaton, and he was obsessed with money, and there was a lot of shows emphasizing money, and there's a lot of pressure on the dinks, dual income, no kids, to have a lot of wealth. So money seemed to be a popular theme in the 80s, but I think I've always known that money does not buy happiness and money does not buy love. If you Dr. Phil always said, back then I liked Dr. Phil, he wasn't around then, but with Oprah, he was around later in the 80s, and he'd say, if you marry for money, you work every day of your life, because you're not gonna, you have to marry for love. You have to be compatible. So I like Dr. Phil when he was on Oprah. We'll just leave it at that. I found this paper to be interesting because those three qualities that I would look for then are the same that I would look for today. Now, what was shocking to me is I got a B on this paper with no comments. On the entire paper, no comments about why it's not A paper. I found a stack of my papers. Some are A's, some are B's, and some are C's, and they're all pretty much the same quality or content. There was nothing more significant about that A paper or less in that C paper. I feel like she maybe didn't agree with what I said, because maybe she wanted me to say, being in the Bible Belt, I should be looking for a Christian husband, which I think if you're honest and considerate, and, well, those are two good Christian characteristics. I don't know why I gotta be. There's no feedback at all on that paper. So I find that interesting. I also remember writing another paper that was not in the stack, and this is the only paper I remember writing, because she chose mine out of the whole class and read it to the entire class as being one of the best papers in the class, and it was My First Love, which again she chose the topic for everyone. I remember us all groaning saying we didn't want to write. I didn't have a first love. I was only 17. But, you know, I guess a lot of these in the South, they encourage dating at whatever age, 12, 13, 14. I don't know. I didn't have a first love, but I made up a story about because I was new, about a co-student, a boy, a young man, asking me out, saying, oh, hey, are you new? And expressing interest in me, and then taking me out and whatever, using me for his gossip or for showing he got to go out with the new girl. And then after the date, we go back to school, and I hear him saying to another girl by her locker, are you new? The same line he had given me. and it's just funny at 17 that I recognized, I don't know, pickup lines, because I wasn't dating a lot, but I guess from Ann Landers and TV, you pick up these ideas from your environment, from TV, movies. Those are a big influence. So I found this to be very interesting. I'm going to read some more of my papers and the things I found before my daughter hears about these, and she'll probably want to take them all to have a good laugh. But I think these are the same qualities. And also I wondered, I don't remember my teacher ever helped me. I know I was always a bad writer. I always thought of myself as a very poor writer. And when I went to college, one of my professors told me I was a horrendous writer. I don't think this paper was all that bad, and I think the teacher never helped. I think she was probably grading papers the whole time you were writing. She'd give you the topic, and you'd sit and write the whole class, and she would be grading papers. So, and back then you didn't have the computer. You didn't have the computer to look up spelling. I know I've always been a horrendous speller. I've always struggled with that. So I think it was pretty challenging to write these papers and not get it. And I know back then there was no talking. It was quiet. It's totally different today, where I was thinking today you'd be lucky if you could find a student who could even write a 5-paragraph paper, as kids don't have the attention span to sit still. And most of the papers we've seen are written by AI. They type their papers and they use AI to write their papers today. So I think that's an A paper. If you compare it to today's schooling, I think I'd give myself an A. I probably could expand it on the conclusion paragraph a little bit more, and probably the consideration I probably could have given an example. I'm going to give you an example of today of what I think is consideration or not, or lack of consideration. Steve has 2 computer screens on his desk, and when I go up there to check on something on the computer, the second one is always showing Sloppy Joe's in Key West, Florida, which is a little bit weird. They've got a camera outside Sloppy Joe's and a camera inside Sloppy Joe's, and it's always running. You can watch as a lot of people pose and call their friends and take pictures or whatever and laugh. But we watched these people in Sloppy Joe's, and one day I saw a woman and her husband or her companion, And the woman had a cane, and she was carrying a shopping bag, like she had bought t-shirts or souvenirs. So she's carrying her cane and the bag. And the first thing I thought was, the man's carrying nothing. How come he's not carrying her bag? She's got a cane. But then he led her over to the high part of the curb. They were, I think, at the crosswalk, but they went zigzag in the road and went to the high part of the curb. And so she had to walk up that high curb, which is not really high, but when you're on with a cane, it's high. So she had to walk up the curb with her cane in her bag, and I thought, what an inconsiderate husband. Is that her husband? I know now, since I fell on a curb, I look for curbs, and I guess until you fall, maybe you don't think about that, but you should walk in the crosswalk. There's so many people who get hit by cars. Even in crosswalks, there was a case in Atlanta where a woman did just get hit in a crosswalk and died in the crosswalk, and the guy drove off, but they did find him. Margaret Mitchell was actually killed by a bus. She walked in between parked cars and walked right in front of a bus. It was Margaret Mitchell's fault because she didn't walk in the crosswalk. Steve's mother worked at a funeral home, and she did the same thing. She walked in front of cars and died. She worked for a funeral home. She probably knew of these cases. But anyway, I look for curbs. As you age, these are the type of things you have to do. You have to take more precautions, slow down, and think ahead, think smart. You have to think. Whereas when I was young, I would literally pop my contacts out and be in bed in 30 seconds. Now going to bed is a whole ordeal at my age. It takes some time to get ready for bed. And that's a whole nother video. Here's my Mr. Right now.
Hey, I am Mr. Right.
34 years and counting.
34 years, whoa.
So this paper I wrote so many years ago still holds true today.
Wow, isn't that incredible?
I think it means that people don't really change, not their core values. Maybe superficial things change.
Yeah, it's the core person is always there, and that's what you're looking for. That's what I fell in love with.
So what qualities does your Miss Right have?
Oh, my Miss Right is smart, caring, loving, has a huge heart, and is very intuitive.
Pretty much the same, except for considerate. You didn't say
Considerate. Oh, I forgot that one.
Pretty much the same things that I was looking for in a Mr. Right when I was a 17-year-old senior in high school.
I didn't know Miss Right when she was 17, but I knew her when she was 26, almost 10 years later, and she still had the same perspective on what she was looking for.
Right, we married 10 years after I wrote that paper.
Yeah, isn't that incredible?
Thank you for joining us. Check out our other videos. Until we see you again,
take it easy.